Next, we meet the U.S. presidents face to face.
4 American presidents together stare out across mountaintops and forests towards the distant horizon. Mount Rushmore, in the Black Hills of South Dakota, is the site of one of America's most famous and most popular national monuments. Almost 3 million visitors a year come to look up at the 18-meter-high heads carved into ancient granite. The Black Hills have long been considered sacred by Native Americans, and the Lakota tribe already had their own name for Mount Rushmore: 6 grandfathers. In 1924, the sculptor Gutzon Borglum was invited to the Black Hills by Dwayne Robinson, the South Dakota state historian. Robinson's original idea was to carve a number of Western heroes into the granite spires of the Needles Rocks, famous figures like Buffalo Bill, Lewis and Clark, Chief Red Cloud. Borglum had other ideas. He wanted U.S. presidents to be the figures for a national monument, and he preferred Mount Rushmore with its southeast face looking into the sun. "America will march along that skyline," he declared. Ed Menard, interpretive ranger at Mount Rushmore National Memorial, takes up the story.
Well, decision was Borglum himself. It wasn't the president, it wasn't a Congress. Borglum was going to pick who he wanted to be up on the mountain. And he says, I want to start off with the birth of the nation. That is George Washington, hero of the Revolutionary War. Then he says we're going to have an expansion period of our nation. That's Thomas Jefferson by the Louisiana Territory, buying that from France. Then we have to have the dark times of our country. We've got to get through that. And that's Abraham Lincoln, 16th president, who after the Civil War got the country all back together again. He preserved the Union. And then taking us into the new century, the modern development of our country, is Theodore Roosevelt. And that equals approximately 150 years, and that's what Borglum wanted represented on the mountain.
Borglum began work on Mount Rushmore on the 4th of October 1927. Together with his team of 35 to 40 workers, he used dynamite to blast the rocks and power tools to finish the surface. It was difficult and dangerous work. His task wasn't made any easier by the mountain. Thomas Jefferson was originally carved on the other side of George Washington. But Borglum hit bad rock, and after 18 months, had to blast Jefferson off the mountain and start him all over again in his present position. Even then, a crack in Jefferson's nose forced the sculptor to move the president's face so that today his gaze looks higher than the eyes of the others. It's hard not to be drawn to the eyes of the carvings, and when visitors get close enough to the stony faces, they are surprised to find that the pupils of the eyes are actually shafts of stone. With delays caused by bad weather, it took 14 hard years to complete the monument. Funding was also a problem for the project, which had the misfortune to coincide with the Great Depression of the 1930s and the outbreak of the Second World War. Yet once the sculpture was completed, it appealed, as Borglum had rightly predicted, to America's sense of national pride. Soon, Mount Rushmore was labeled the Shrine to Democracy. Gutzon Borglum never lived to see his dream completed. He died in March 1941 on his way to Washington to plead for more money. After his death, it was left to his son, who had been named Lincoln after one of the 4 Mount Rushmore presidents, to complete the task.
Well, Borglum, he really wanted to finish the left side of Lincoln's face. Because you look at the mountain, it's not finished. There's no ear. You see a start of a hand, lapel, and collar. But back in April 1941, Congress had notified Borglum, a week before his death approximately, that there's no more money for Mount Rushmore due to World War II starting in Europe. We weren't sending troops yet, but we were sending a lot of money, a lot of supplies, and they said the funding for Mount Rushmore is, nothing. So Borglum died March 6, 1941, but his son Lincoln, who really doesn't get enough credit, he really held this whole project together, Lincoln Borglum did. He was well trained in all aspects of the mountain. He more or less took over his father's work. He only had, several dollars left in the bank, enough to do Washington's collar, touch up Washington's collar, little work in Jefferson's hair. And on October 31st, 1941, Lincoln Borglum declared Mount Rushmore completed.